Welcome, friends, to the sixth episode of Venture Forward Together, an interview series highlighting the work and stories of colleagues in the social impact and sustainability fields. We are Danielle Doza and Victoria Avi of Venture Forward Strategies, a consulting firm helping companies make a more positive impact in this world through better social and environmental practices. We're based in Cleveland. Let's check in on each other. Victoria, you recently took a cross-country road trip to Oregon to visit your in-laws. So, what were some inspiring moments or scenes from the trip?
We went through a couple of national parks and many state parks, and I was fascinated by the distribution of land, how it's either farmland, city, or a park. And there's not a lot of ambiguity in between. I felt like it was very clear cut. But some of the parks were absolutely beautiful, the Badlands, the Arches, and we went through Black Hills on one of the days. So inspiring. What's been a highlight for you this week, Danielle?
A simple highlight. I've using some veggies for my garden. I made this potato leek soup last night with potatoes and leeks from our garden, which has been awesome. And for the first time, we're going something new. We're going a ground cherry, so I brought one today, and they have just been, a fun little part of the garden. So you peel it open like a tomatillo, and this little sweet fruit comes out that smells like a pineapple, part of the tomato family, I think. But it's been a lot of fun. We have them in our front yard, so we can have neighbors come over and pick up a ground cherry and try it, which has been a lot of fun. So the garden has been a nice time this week. And I am excited to introduce our guest today. Jared Yarnall-Schane is the Entrepreneurship Director at the Biomimicry Institute, which is an organization that provides tools to develop sustainable solutions for a balanced ecosystem by empowering people to learn and apply nature-inspired strategies in design. Jared was previously the program director at Thought for Food, which supports young entrepreneurs from around the world that are addressing the challenge of feeding 9 billion people by the year 2050. He's also a fellow classmate of mine from the Penn Center for Social Impact Strategy. So Jared, welcome to Venture Forward Together. Congrats on your recent nuptials.
Thank you.
Tell us, how are you doing, and how was getting married in a beautiful forest, even during this pandemic?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me on. It's so great to chat with you both here. Also love ground cherries.
That's
You know, are they native to the Northeast? I feel like.
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
I saw them on a gardening show recently of
Yeah.
someone in Canada, and I was like, those seem awesome. They're a great
Yeah.
kind of filler, so we grew them, and they're just a sweet little treat.
Perfect. Yeah. For some reason in my mind, they're from the Northeast. But anyway, yeah. Thank you so much for the well wishes on the wedding. We had to pivot our wedding ceremony as so many people have. And we ended up having this really nice, intimate ceremony with their parents in our local state forest, which is one of our favorite places. And I think it just ended up being perfect. We wouldn't have changed anything. And it really helped us to focus in on like the why we're doing this, as opposed to the how or who is this for? So yeah, it was fantastic. And now we're getting ready to move to another state. So
Right, during this time. Yeah, good luck. That's exciting. Yeah, exciting and probably a little scary all at the same time right now. But so can you give us an overview of the Biomimicry Institute and the 3 seeds of biomimicry and your work there?
yeah, happy to. So like you mentioned at the top, at the Biomimicry Institute, we're really looking to help promote and inspire individuals to look to nature to inspire solutions to make the world a healthier and happier place for all species, not just for humans. And we do this in a couple of different ways, and I like to look at them as program buckets. So we have 3 different program buckets. We have an education program bucket where we work with youth in middle and high school to help them integrate biomimicry design process, the process of looking to nature, into their classroom. And they actually come up with their own designs, and we have a youth design challenge then that we are able to kind of give feedback on and give some awards. We also focus on education in the university and young professional setting as well. And in a similar way, we work with the participants to come up with new designs based on nature. So they identify a problem, they look to see how might we've defined this problem as a biologist, and then how can we learn from what's already known in biology and nature and chemistry to solve those problems. So that's the education bucket. Then we have what I like to consider like our media and comms bucket. And this is where we do a lot of our outreach, and our biggest kind of program in this space is our website, Ask Nature. So if you go to asknature.org, it's like a Google search bar pops up. You can type in waterproof as example, and it will show you how plants and animals repel water. So it's a really fascinating collection of biological strategies, of ideas and innovations that people have made. And we leverage this to get some pretty big media exposure. And then the last bucket, and this is the part that I run, is our entrepreneurship bucket. So we love inspiring new designs and training designers on how to do this, but ultimately our goal is to create a more sustainable and regenerative world. And we believe a great way to do that is to take some of those designs and also to find some people that are also creating nature-inspired solutions and get them the startup support that they need to take things forward. So we have an early stage startup training program, and then we also have what's called the Ray of Hope Prize, which is a $100,000 prize competition that we run in partnership with the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. And Ray was the founder of Interface Carpet. So with that, we look for startups that are a bit farther along. They already have products in market, and we're trying to shine a spotlight on them and tell the world about their great work. And then, you mentioned the 3 seeds of biomimicry. Sorry. So this all kind of then comes full circle, where we, with 3 different things that we focus on, and this runs true throughout all 3 of these program buckets. And there's really 3 parts of biomimicry that we look for. One is emulate. And what that means is we can go and identify a specific strategy that has evolved over the course of millions of years and figure out how to recreate that. So that's the emulate part. And that's the part people are most familiar with biomimicry. Then we have the ethos component. And the ethos is really around looking to see how nature operates within our global context, which is really a global system. And that includes things like green materials, green chemistry, being locally attuned and sensitive to inputs coming in. And our goal is to help make sure that designs and entrepreneurs and students that are going through our program contain that same ethos in all that they're doing. And then the last component is reconnect. And I think this is one of the most fun aspects, is really when you look to nature to inspire designs, you're going out into nature and you're gaining a new appreciation and understanding of what exists in nature. And not only are you doing that, but you're helping your users, you're helping your customers, you're helping your clients, and just even the general public understand new facts about what's happening around them. And just that alone, I think, inspires a transformational shift.
Thanks for sharing that, Jared. Can you tell us more where we and others can learn more about the 3 C's of biomimicry?
Yeah, the best place to go would just be to Ask Nature. So asknature.org, and we have a whole wealth of resources there. And then if you want to dive a little bit deeper, you could enter into one of our education programs. So we have that youth design track for students, and then we call it the Biomimicry Global Design Challenge for university and young professional age.
That's great. Yeah, and we can share those links in our show notes as well. So how are entrepreneurs responding during this unusual time? Are they creating opportunities from this crisis? What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think it's important to state, like, we're working with entrepreneurs that are what would be categorized usually as deep tech startups. So they're being spun out of usually university or academic research, or they are working in a wet lab or some other sort of kind of lab setting. So they're not like kind of the mom and pop pizza shops. I think that being said, a lot of them haven't been able to access their labs or equipment. And a lot of them maybe haven't been able to go to where they have their installations or where they're running their pilots. So they're working kind of blindly almost. I think because of the type of entrepreneurs we're working with, they haven't necessarily seen their funding dry up. Their terms maybe aren't as good if they're out raising funding as it would have been, but there's still general support for what they're doing. I think looking ahead, we might see a decrease in the pipeline. I think these are already established companies. A lot of them have already secured 1 million plus in funding. I think looking ahead as we're trying to build this pipeline of people coming into our programs, we just might not see as many. And then I think the other thing I just wanted to note is because a lot of these entrepreneurs are scientist entrepreneurs, a lot of their labs have been converted into rapid response for COVID. And some of them are even looking to see how their products and solutions might be able to help with the pandemic, either in direct alleviation or creating products and services that kind of assist with recovery. So.
Yeah.
So my next question is to address those non-deep tech businesses, so existing manufacturing, service, lifestyle businesses. What could the owners of those businesses do differently? How could they use the 3 seeds of biomimicry to make a shift to become a more sustainable, more responsive company?
Yeah, I think to help answer this, I'll paint the example of Interface Carpet, which is our partners, the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. Ray founded that company. And it's, for some context, it's one of the world's biggest textile manufacturers, and they make carpet squares, so modular carpet tiles.
Yeah, we love that company. I just ordered some Interface carpet squares for our living room, so we're all about Interface.
Love it. Well, in the 90s, they were they were a traditional company. Like they were, I think, approaching $1 billion in sales or revenue. And Ray had this epiphany, which he called the spear in the chest, where he started to realize, like, our company's making the world a worse place for my kids and my grandkids. And is that the legacy that he and Interface wanted to leave behind?
Thanks, Jared. So I want to ask about the non-deep tech businesses. How could manufacturing, service, and lifestyle businesses use the 3 seeds of biomimicry to improve their operation, improve their purpose, to become better and more sustainable businesses?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to help illustrate it, I'll share the example of our partners at the Ray C. Anderson Foundation. And Ray, who is the founder of Interface Carpet, which is one of the world's biggest carpet textile manufacturers. So in the 90s, Interface was on this huge trajectory of growth. They were approaching $1 billion in revenue. And Ray had this epiphany where he realized that his company was doing much more to harm the world than to help it, and really wanted to address that for his legacy and for the company's legacy. But I think even more importantly, he was always drawn towards doing work for children and for tomorrow's future. So he called this moment his spear in the chest epiphany, and set out and built a team at Interface to really look to see how they could bring sustainability principles into the company. And they set some pretty dramatic goals to be carbon neutral, if not even carbon negative, within 25 years. So part of this process was they turned to biomimicry. So they brought in Janine Benyus, who's one of our co-founders, into the company, and started kind of asking, well, how would nature do this? We're a carpet textile manufacturer. How does nature do this? And David Oakey, their lead designer, looked at the forest floor and saw that there were leaves kind of scattered all about. There was no consistent pattern, but it looked beautiful. And taking that as inspiration, they started to create carpet tiles with similar types of random patterns that could be mixed and matched in any way. So there was no set pattern. And just by doing this, by kind of mimicking that forest floor, they were able to drastically cut back on waste. And that was one of the real big sustainability wins through biomimicry. Now,
right? Is that the name of the carpet?
Entropy.
Pattern?
Yeah, entropy. And there's a case study about this on Ask Nature as well, if you're interested in exploring that more. So that was just a start. So that was like mimicking, right? That was the emulating aspect. So then how can we take the ethos, and one of his kind of key parts of the ethos is there really is no waste in nature, or at least waste is recirculated, right? It's circulated around. So they started to apply some great kind of early circular economy thinking within their manufacturing waste streams. So yeah, I think that's just a great example of a giant textile industry, which is usually one of the most polluting industries. Like, they've made tremendous strides into creating a healthier and more sustainable world. And we can all learn from Interface there.
Yeah, it's a good example.
Yeah, and waste is, we talk about how kind of waste is like a gateway into sustainability, kind of looking at trying to reduce that waste wherever it is in the company. So it's just such a good example of this huge petroleum-based company, is now carbon negative, right? They even beat their goals. So it's definitely inspiring in the use of kind of biomimicry, right? They didn't just look to nature for design inspiration in a way. They look to nature to really reduce it and make a positive impact there. So I love that example every time. Jared, we've been thinking about company values and impact during this time as well, and how values are showing up for people and stakeholders. So how can nature influence company values at a time like this?
Oh yeah, that's such a great question. I think one of the best examples, so part of our early stage startup training program is what we call our entrepreneurship expedition. So we take participants into a pretty pristine, preserved ecosystem. And this past year, we took our participants, we took about 31 young entrepreneurs into the jungles of Panama. But the journey to get to that jungle, I think, is what's coming to mind. So we landed in Panama City, and then we drove through the city, suburbs, farm field, kind of, weird land in between farm and like secondary forest, and then we finally arrived in the primary rainforest. And for individuals who have never had this deep nature experience, like maybe they've gone to Central Park, but they haven't been out maybe even a national park here in the US. This was such a transformative journey because you saw the impacts that humans have had on the environment all along the way. And I think just that aspect of bringing our designers and engineers and entrepreneurs and business people into that environment, and then helping them to not only appreciate the nature that was there, but to really take some time to learn from nature, learn about it, and then learn how you might apply it to your business. It was a transformative journey. And I often think about what would the world look like if instead of boardroom meetings where you're sitting around a cut down tree, you went out and had your boardroom meeting in your local state park or in your state forest. And how does that change what you're talking about? How does that change your talk about waste? How does that change your talk about production numbers? And I think just that experience of reconnection is really powerful and really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's similar to kind of a theme we've seen with our other conversations, just being in nature, can be restorative and kind of guide values, which is so wonderful. Yeah. So we've also been discussing how companies that focus on positive impacts are more resilient during times of crisis. they're better prepared to adapt and continue to provide value to stakeholders during such times. So how can businesses and organizations learn and get inspired from the 3 C's and biomimicry to increase their resiliency?
Yeah, it's so interesting because when I hear this question, my startup kind of coaching hat immediately comes on, and it's that you need to be providing value to people, and you need to be providing value beyond kind of wants, right? It's you need to meet a real need, and when I think about kind of products and solutions that are providing and meeting a real like societal need, it's typically revolves, it's in the food and agriculture space. It's creating more fuel efficient designs because we can save money then through the process. It's on creating new products and chemicals that are less harmful for us and for the environment, and that you can get at a similar cost, if not the same. It's in products that restore the world instead of damaging it, because we all like to go out and appreciate nature, like we just said. So I think for me, it actually becomes even more of a fundamental, like, just, are you providing value to people? And if you are, I think you're going to be resilient. And I think we have to have a fundamental shift on what people mean when they say they're providing value. It's meeting some of these basic needs that we have as humans. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't necessarily in the biomimicry realm, but that's just more from kind of working with these startups.
Yeah, it is. And we think about when there's kind of some sort of ecological disaster or crisis, there are species of flora and fauna that can really thrive and adapt quickly. And especially in our changing environment today, looking to how is nature adapting to this, and how is it surviving? And we know that the environment can survive very well without us. So kind of looking to why does that happen? And, and I hope more companies start to do that.
Yeah. And something kind of along those lines is something I'm thinking a lot about, especially, I think we're having the hearings with some of the big tech companies later today, is like, when resources get hoarded in nature, like ecosystems collapse. And we're seeing this with major conglomerations and agrochemicals and tech, just pretty much throughout all big forms of business. And something's going to have to give. We know that this is what happens. So yeah, I think it's prime opportunity. And like you just mentioned, like when a tree falls in the forest, it's a great loss, but it provides a sunspot where so many different species and trees can flourish and kind of come to life. And I think we're at a time where we might be, where we might need to start experiencing that.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about, or ask you about a radical change. So if we had a magic wand today and we could redesign all of businesses, all of society or economy, the large systems that are all interconnected with the biomimicry lens, how or what would that look like? Could you share, if you have a kind of like a vision for the future that's more radical, would you share that with us?
Yeah, and I'll share it through telling stories of some of the startups we're working with. Because I really do think that we have to fundamentally redesign how we're approaching some of these problems. So first thing that comes to mind is there's a group called eConcrete out of Israel. And this was started by 2 marine biologists who were studying coral reefs around the world. And they started to look and realize that, one, when humans came in and started building concrete infrastructure for like marine protection in marinas or just coastline protection, these coral reefs would die. And then they would also see like, oh, wow, interesting. Sometimes marine life can grow on this concrete. Why is that? So they started to explore that, and they discovered that it's a combination of what the concrete's made out of, kind of the nooks and crannies in the concrete, as well as just kind of the larger macro design as well. So they're fundamentally, their company fundamentally will help redesign coastline. So instead of just creating a barrier that protects humans, what if we create a barrier that's kind of built like a coral reef and will encourage polyps and oysters and fish to live there? So now it's not only protecting humans, it's protecting the nature that concrete is kind of disturbing. And the best part is, because of the kind of biocalcification that happens over time, the concrete structures get stronger. So it's a little bit more expensive up front, but you don't have to do as much maintenance, and the structures last longer, right? So that's like just a fundamental shift. It seems so intuitive, but until their company started doing this, like they're one of the first people out there kind of looking at this from that lens. Another great example is a company called Cypress Materials. And they're creating a company that's based off of structural color. So in nature, there's many different kind of organisms that have these vibrant colors, like the morpho blue butterfly, that bright blue butterfly. Those scales aren't actually like pigmented blue. They're brown or they're see-through. But how the nanoscale patterns of the scales line up, it reflects blue wavelengths of light. So this company has created a paint that you can paint on that works within the visible, infrared, and UV spectrum, and they can tune it to reflect certain wavelengths of light. So instead of having toxic pigments and dyes in the paint, it's just how the light reflects off of it. And when you think about the bigger context, is like, here's now an affordable competitor to paint something, and really it's an affordable competitor to pigments and dyes. And humans have been using pigments and dyes for, I mean, as long as humans have existed, right? There's cave drawings on the wall. So this is providing us the opportunity to fundamentally paint in a new way. And again, it's by how has nature done this? How can we learn from nature to make that happen? So I think for me, like one of the most exciting parts about biomimicry is looking at technologies that have existed and looking at kind of the status quo and asking, well, why? And then asking even deeper, like, why are we doing that? And then start to figure out, how might we design this differently? If we can learn from nature, how might nature inform our design practices here, or business practices? And yeah, those are two startup examples, but I think that there's also tremendous examples within major companies as well. Just as an example, like if we look at our bones, or like bird bones, they're extremely strong, and they're also extremely lightweight. So how might we take the algorithm that kind of guides that bone and tells that bone how to grow, and create 3D printed structures for airplane shells? And if we do that, how much weight savings could we save, and how much then fuel savings would that kind of bring about? And so that's what gets me excited. I love to geek out about the technology and what's coming out.
Yeah, so it's a lot about design. You know, I think more organizations need to start looking at design more, and kind of putting the time and investment into that. You know, we talk about radical change. I think it's radical just for some companies to even think about design, you know. So, you know, we're certainly trying to push that a little bit more. So thanks for sharing.
Well, I think those questions are so important. Why and how might we? I remember trying to answer that question in the CSIS program, which gets me to our next question. So we've all completed the Center for Social Impact Strategy program. So I know Jared and Danielle, you guys were in the class of 2018.
Yes.
I was in the class of 2017. And we certainly found a lot of value for our personal and professional lives. Jared, how have you integrated the resources, knowledge from the CSIS and your network into your job?
Yeah, I think the network has been the biggest part of it for me, is meeting folks like you and and having just kind of a mastermind group to come back to and ask questions and share resources. I think the other thing is my background is very much in the entrepreneurship space. I was trained as an engineer, but I started a company in college, and I've really been kind of working in this space of for-profit social impact. So for me, this was an exposure to kind of the nonprofit leadership world and learning things like theory of change and logic model, like things that intuitively make sense, but I didn't have a name for them, and I maybe wasn't following the industry standards. So for me, this was just a great kind of bridge for me to translate that kind of for-profit social impact world into the nonprofit world.
Yeah, I always find myself framing questions and how might we, in many different aspects of my life. And, it's a great way to look at things. So I always appreciate that, kind of just that shift in mindset in our work, whether it's our professional work or, my community work, which has been, really beneficial, I think. And of course, the network is amazing. We get to meet so many great people. So this has been awesome. So we do have 4 specific questions we like to ask everyone. And, feel free to just elaborate on whatever you want to. So the first one is, who inspires you?
Yeah, I'm really inspired by the entrepreneurs I work with. I think they give me hope. I'm very much an optimist, and we're surrounded by a lot of negative news all the time. So I think one reason I'm drawn to my work is because they're painting a hopeful picture for what the world could look like in the future.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah. And what is your favorite sustainability or social impact book or resource?
Yeah, I came into the field of kind of sustainability through international development. And that's really helped guide a lot of kind of where I've been focused on. So my favorite kind of resource there, and just a life-changing book for me there, it's called Poor Economics, written by I think 2 MIT professors, and it just was really illuminating to see kind of the trap of poverty and how we as a society and species needs to figure that out.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we'll share that in the notes as well. Cool. So what energizes you in your work?
Yeah, I think, again, working with these entrepreneurs, getting to see a lot of different solutions that they're working on. I think also just knowing, like, we need a change. Like, this is a big problem. We know that. We've talked about it for so long. But actually, like, being able to be a part of making that change happen is extremely fulfilling and rewarding. And it's very challenging. It can be very hard at times, and it can feel lonely at times. But I think I'm energized by our larger society's response to it, to climate change and environmental change. And I'm especially energized by youth, and just have been so impressed with kind of the youth movement that's been happening.
Yeah, I have a lot of hope for the future looking at the younger generation, which is great. So when those challenges are a little overwhelming and that loneliness creeps in, what do you do to restore yourself?
Yeah, I go out into nature. Love backpacking, and have been getting into bike riding more and more. So for me, it's unplugging, putting away the screen, and finding some green space to go and reflect and rest and rejuvenate. Yeah,
that's wonderful. So
I have a question. Jared, do you have a daily practice where you interact with nature?
Ooh, good question. Sometimes. At the moment, not so much. But yeah, I would say I try to get out and walk at least 2 miles every day, or get out and do like a decent bike ride.
Mm-hmm. That's so nice. Yeah. Jared, is there anything else you want to share, whether it's about your work, biomimicry, about nature?
Yeah, I think just that anyone can practice biomimicry. We work with youth from 7th grade through 12th grade, and we're also piloting some younger programs as well. And it's really, I think, just a fundamental shift from your traditional learnings, right? So we all have biology classes or chemistry classes or physics classes where you're learning about kind of just like how something works, right? And this is just a fundamental shift to kind of ask a little bit farther and ask, well, why is that happening? And then how might we apply that to our human challenges? And I think really, if you're interested in biomimicry, check out some of the resources we have, because this is a practice that anyone can bring to the table. And it's not always around product design. That's a big part of what I focus on. But we see people applying this in the realm of finance, in the realm of policy, in the realm of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just I really encourage people to check out asknature.org and then biomimicry.org to see what we have available.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we just, encourage everyone listening to get outside, get in nature, see what you can learn. It can definitely be restorative and energizing. So Jared Yarnall-Schane of the Biomimicry Institute, thank you so much for joining us today and having this conversation. I know Victoria loves to geek out on biomimicry. So this was exciting for both of us. So we really appreciate it. And again, congrats on your nuptials and good luck with the move.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thank you, Jared.
Thanks, Jared.